All right, everyone, welcome to this week's episode of the Peaking Podcast. I am really excited this week to have Christian Elston on with us. He has one of the more exciting career arcs that I've seen and had on the show. So really excited to go down the rabbit hole with him in a number of different places. But he's a former CIA officer. He's a cybersecurity leader, worked for Google. He's a triathlete. He's a performance coach. All around really good dude. And so excited to get to know you more, excited to have you on the show. If you would like, tell us a little bit about yourself, starting from the beginning. Who are you?
Wow, Brian, incredible intro. I'm excited to be here with you. Really looking forward to this conversation. So thank you for having me. Yeah, I guess I can start from the beginning, and just see where the conversation goes. But taking it, nearly all the way back. I'm more of a product of circumstance, if I have to say that. For context, my family and I were supposed to be missionaries overseas, to the former Yugoslavia. So I have exposure to other cultures. Formerly studied Albanian as well as Russian and a few other of the former Yugoslav languages. But that was the 2008 timeframe when the economy crashed, and we all know how that went. And so we actually ended up not going overseas. But in preparation for me trying to go overseas, I actually took a test. I was in California at the time, and the test was basically the proficiency exam. And a little known fact about the proficiency exam is at the time, if you pass the exam with a legal parent or guardian signature, it actually doubles as a high school diploma. And so the intent was for me to take that exam, pass. I was homeschooled at the time, so I took the exam, passed, and then I would go off, be a missionary for a couple of years, do some culture and language learning, and by the time I came back, I'd be right where I should be with my peers and go to college. Well, I took the exam and I passed, but we didn't go overseas. And
Right.
so I ended up enrolling full time at my community college at 14. And so I just started off on that journey and started doing full time college at 14. Did community college, went to 4-year university, ended up graduating top of my class in computer engineering. So very very proud of that. And then promptly went off to a career where I didn't use any of it. Um, and I applied to the CIA, and they were like, "Sure, why not?"
Cool.
And ended up joining the CIA at 20. So I graduated with a 4-year computer engineering degree. Immediately went off to the CIA, and then spent 3.5 years doing undercover work. So I worked in the Directorate of Operations undercover. I can talk about it. If anybody asked what I did, I'd have to kill them.
Yeah.
Jokes.
Yeah.
Um, and then while I was there, I went and got a master's in cybersecurity, because I had a computer engineering undergrad, took a couple of years off to do the spy stuff, went and got a master's in cybersecurity. And then when I left the CIA, I transitioned to a small penetration testing company that trained me in doing application security. From there, went to Mandiant. From there, Google bought Mandiant, and I was at Mandiant up until recently. And as you and I have discussed, I've since transitioned to doing something that, again, is undercover and I can't talk too much about, but maybe we'll cover a little bit later.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you for the quick overview of that. So maybe going back, what piqued your interest for computer engineering? Why did you want to go do a degree in that space?
Yeah, that's actually, again, product of circumstance.
Hmm.
So when the town that I grew up in was adjacent to an Air Force base in California called Edwards Air Force Base. I'm sure you've seen
Yeah.
Transformers, you've seen Iron Man, you've seen Captain Marvel. This is the base that gets featured in all of the shots from any of these big block action movies, because out at Edwards is where they do the test flight school. And so all of the experimental planes, all of the aspects that go there, this is actually where they broke the sound barrier. So Chuck Yeager broke the sound barrier for the first time out at Edwards Air Force Base. And so naturally, my family wasn't military. My dad's former Navy, but we weren't active duty or anything. So we were just in this town adjacent to Edwards Air Force Base, and so many of the members who went to my local church were from the base. And so
Mhm.
all of my mentors and friends of my parents were Air Force officers and engineers and aspects. And these are the kind of people that I grew up around.
Yeah.
Um, and so when we ended up not going overseas and I had to go into college, I had no idea what I wanted to do at 14. I don't think any 14-year-old should be expected to know what they want to do with their life.
Yeah.
But I always said I want to be an engineer because all these people I was around that I thought were great were engineers.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I ended up taking a computer programming class and I really liked programming. And I was like, well, can I be an engineer and do programming? And then that's when I found computer engineering. And I was
Yeah.
like, perfect. There
That's
we go.
it. That's it. Sense. Makes sense. And then, why the switch over to the CIA?
I watched the Bourne trilogy one too many times. Uh, I think every little boy is probably fascinated with spycraft and spying, and I think that's a very normal thing. The thing that was a little bit abnormal for me is I really, really wanted to do it. Um, but to be fair, I make a joke, but I really dissected the Bourne trilogy way too many times.
Yeah.
There was like a bonus features on like one of the discs, and I would go through and watch all of them. And what was fascinating about that series and what kind of like planted the seed for me was they had an interview on the bonus features where they were actually talking to somebody who presumably is former CIA, and he dissects one of the scenes in The Bourne Identity, and he goes, there's obviously some Hollywood here, but our agents, our officers are trained to do X, Y, and Z of this. I was
Mhm.
like, that can't be real. So I go to Google. I start researching. I start diving in. And I'm like, okay, like if Jason Bourne was real, what would his job be at the CIA? Well, I didn't find, apply for Jason Bourne here. But that led me down a path of identifying, well, most likely he'd probably be part of the director of operations. So then I start looking at the director of operations and I start going through the list of jobs and understanding what each of the different roles was. And quite honestly, I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. Put it
Mhm.
away. Didn't think anything of it. I'm doing a 4-year degree in computer engineering, and
How
my
how old were
camp
you during this time ish?
ish 14, 15,
Okay.
16, right
So this
roughly
like
that time frame.
right kind of in the beginning of going to getting your degree, going to get
Yeah.
your undergraduate. Cool.
Right. Trying to figure out what I want to do. Right.
Yeah.
Well, then I'm at the computer engineering school at Cal State Bakersfield. And one day I see an article. The campus announces their global intelligence, national security major and minor. And I was like, well, that's interesting.
Mhm.
I'm in the School of Natural Sciences, and the political science people are over in their own wing of the campus. So, engineering students and poli sci, we don't mix. So I was the lone engineering student who made the trek over to the poli sci group, and I go and find one of the professors there who was listed in the article, and I said, "Hey, tell me about this major minor thing." And he was like, "Yeah, it's new, and it's part of our, national security program thing. Are you interested?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm interested. Like, is it going to make me a spy?" He's like, "No, but you could go talk to spies." I was like, "That's cool." Um, and as part of that, they actually had a simulation, is what they called it, where we traveled to another Cal State engineering, Cal State University. Words are getting jumbled. And actual representatives from the agency ran a intelligence exercise. And
Fun.
so I'm like starstruck. I'm
Yeah.
16, right? And Cal State Bakersfield is one of the intelligence community centers of excellence. So what that means is like there are specific campuses that have relationships with the intelligence community, and so Cal State Bakersfield was one of those. And so this intelligence simulation is what it was called as part of that whole structure. And I go there and I'm starstruck. I'm talking like real spies. Like I'm like buttoned up to a T, like, whatever. Um, and I had a blast. I loved the exercise. It was an evolving scenario of statecraft and collapses of nations and like what are you trying to do and like it was a really fun time. And at the end, I'm talking to these people, these representatives, and I tell them, well, I'm a computer engineering student, and all stuff. And they're like, have you ever thought about a career at the CIA? Because we need good people like that. And I was like, no, other than me researching Jason Bourne. And they're like, maybe you should read a couple books. And if any of your viewers are astute, my intelligence and statecraft books are right behind
There
me.
you go. Okay.
And so that started that process. And so I completed a minor in global intelligence and national security. And during my senior year was when I kind of dusted off my research and said, you know what, I'm going to apply to the director of operations and see what happens.
Yeah. Very
Yeah,
cool. Now, so you're 16 years old. I imagine the students and people around you are 4 years older around,
at least, yes.
did age impact your mindset? Did it ever come into question for your own, um, confidence and
Mm,
sitting in the room, talking to officers? What was that like?
yeah, that's a brilliant question, Brian. Um, no, that's a brilliant question. So it probably impacted me, but not in the way that maybe you would expect. Um, So I was always more comfortable talking to adults than I was talking to my own peers. I mentioned I was homeschooled. One year I got so bored during summer break that I didn't take a summer break and I just kept working. And by the end of that calendar year, I had actually completed 2 grade levels. And so just inherently, as like I was already a year ahead of my peers, just because that's just what I did because I got bored. And I was always more comfortable talking to adults. And adults, I never got to think they talked down to me. They always like expected me to talk up to their level. And so when I got into college, I was very comfortable talking to everybody around me to the point that people mistook um, me like how old I actually was.
Yeah.
As I have a beard. That was part of my disguise.
Did you have a
But
beard then at 16?
no, no. It was it was a
Baby
great moment.
Christian, yeah.
I was baby faced. It was bad. But I everybody mistook how old I was.
Sure.
So the point where it actually did impact me though, is I never was really comfortable hanging out with peers. I didn't do extracurriculars at college, because I couldn't. To be honest with you, I mean there's most college life. I mean I lived at home during college, so I didn't like go away or anything like that. And so I just had a routine of going to school, doing my classes, hanging out with people in the science lab, going home, doing my homework. That was
Yeah.
me up until senior year. Senior year, I was 18, 19. And so at that point, that was where I was like, okay, like I probably can do a lot more stuff. And so my senior year, I went out for all the clubs. I was president of an honor society. I did all this other stuff too, that a lot of people would do throughout all 4 years of their college experience. I just slammed it all into the last year.
Yeah, yeah, cool. I think it's an interesting thought. A lot of the people listening and just people in general, right? There's that aspect of life and career where you're trying to go to the next level, and there's a lot of psychology around it that people are constantly dealing with of acting as if or acting a level up to get the experience to become the person. And I talk to a lot of engineers just that have the confidence. And then I talk to others that don't, right? And it's just a fascinating thing to think about. And if there was a way to unlock that for certain people to give them the confidence or the ability to go into a room where they're not
Yeah.
necessarily among their peers, you
No,
know?
that's good. That's good. Um, so I'm gonna kind of tangent on that a little bit, but I want to
Sure.
come back. I really want to come back to that because I want to come back to something that my dad told me actually. So
Yeah,
give me some fatherly wisdom there,
I
right?
love it.
Which if he goes and listens to this, he's gonna be horribly embarrassed. But um, so for me, one of the things that I was good at, I've used this term many times now. I'm a product of circumstance. I was supposed to be going overseas, so I graduated high school. I was bored, so I just did 2 grades. Right. Many people would mistake um, my quote unquote advancedness, right? Like being 16 full time in college, right? A lot of people would consider that, maybe you're an advanced child or something. For me, no. Um, I was good at doing homework. I was good at school. Like that's what I say. I was good at studying. I was good at taking tests. Um, and I just worked hard. My mom used to get really irritated when people would be like, "Oh, he's so smart," and she'd be like, "No, he's not smart. He just works hard," right? And so for me, my confidence in that regard came from knowing what I was good at and then leaning hard into it. I also am the kind of person who really likes having structure, and I also really like having a goal to hit. And this actually became very difficult for me when I joined the agency because even at the agency, I entered into what was called the professional trainee program, which is a very fancy way of saying this kid is super young, so we gotta like give him some time to grow up before we, like that's collectively like what it really is for. And so the professional trainee program had me doing a number of different rotations around different job functions at the agency. So I got to actually act in multiple capacities of the traditional director of operations roles. So I got
Mhm.
to operate as a collections management officer. I got to operate as a staff operations officer. I got to operate as a targeting officer. Um, but in the back of my head, there was this goal of like, well, this program is supposed to take X number of years. How, like, can I do that faster? Right? Like
Mhm.
there's a goal. Like, can I do that? When I don't have a goal to hit, it becomes really hard. And this is actually something that I've had to contend with in my entrepreneurship journey. Because in entrepreneurship, there are goals, arbitrary goals that you can set out to do. Make X number of dollars a year in revenue, or hit X percentage of profitability, gain so many clients, right? $100 million offer, like whatever you want to say. Okay.
Sure.
Um, like there are goals that you can hit, but to be quite blunt, they're arbitrary, right?
Mhm.
The goal ceases, in my opinion, to stop being something that you attain, and the goal starts to shift into who you become. And so from that regard, confidence is not a product of what you do, or of what you accomplish. Let me put it that way. It's confidence comes from the consistent application of effort that you put out.
Mhm.
And so Alex Hormozy says this often, where he's like, if you're lacking confidence, just do something 1,000 times. And by the end of that, you're going to be confident in doing it because you put the work in.
Yeah.
Confidence doesn't come from you hitting a goal. Confidence comes from the level of effort that you put out in trying to attain the goal. And so, that being said, people can fake confidence, right?
Mhm.
And before I left for the agency, so I lived at home all 4 years. I graduated, and like within 2 weeks, I was headed to the East Coast. Um, and just before then, my dad gave me two pieces of advice, and I think they come from like 80s movies. If any of your listeners are big fans of 80s movies, here you go. These might sound familiar. Um, he said, first up, don't be a dick. And I don't know if I could say that on the podcast, but there you go.
Absolutely.
um,
Let's go.
he said, his point, don't be a jerk. Be be nice. Okay. It's not really something that I struggle with, but it was a good reminder because the implicitness is you're going to encounter people who are dicks. Recognize that. The second piece of advice, I think, comes from the dude. What's the or no, not the dude. Fast Times at Ridgemont High. There you go.
Okay.
Okay. No matter where you are, act like it's the place to be. And when I got into the agency, I actually took that and I created an axiom for it. And I said, no matter where you are, act like you're supposed to be there. Those three rules actually form the basis of fake it till you make it.
Mhm.
Don't be a dick. No matter where you are, act like it's the place to be. And no matter where you are, act like you're supposed to be there. If you do those three things, people are going to believe that A, you're supposed to be where you're at. And B, if you're not in the room, they're going to get you and pull you into the room.
Mhm.
And so, from that perspective, you execute those three rules consistently. You become the kind of person who exudes confidence, not because you're arrogant, not because you're boastful, but because you're a nice person. You are present in whatever room that you're at, and you act like you are supposed to be there.
Love it. Yeah, that's a really good foundation, a fun way to break it down. That's fantastic. And then you said something that really stands out to me. So, and I want you to repeat it again, right? So you said, the goal of entrepreneurship is becoming the person you want to be.
Yeah. So the goal of entrepreneurship ceases to be more about what you attain and who you become in the process of attaining it.
Yeah. I love
Yeah.
that. It's an interesting way to think about entrepreneurship, and life, quite frankly, life in general, right? Like as we all are
Yeah.
striving to achieve these things, in often these monetary things or societal things, community things, status
Mhm.
things, but really, what is that, right? And I think when we all, when it's all said and done, and you're laying on your deathbed, and people are talk about looking back, it's less about all those things, but it's the person you were in that specific moment, how you acted, how you treated other people, right? Don't be a
Mhm.
dick.
Don't be a dick.
Being present in the moment, absolutely.
Mhm.
And then, yeah, acting like you're supposed to be there, the confidence to cut, rise up to the moment and
Right.
be the person that you need to be. So I think that could go across so many places of life. That's awesome. Very
Have
cool.
you heard the book Mindset by Carol Dweck?
I have not.
I'd like to commend that to you and to your listeners. So this book Mindset, there's a handful of books that I have been very impactful for me. This one's one of them. And what it is Carol Dweck is a psychologist, and she underscores two different kinds of mindsets. And what she's found is that there are fixed mindsets and growth oriented mindsets. In fixed mindsets, your value as a person is tied to what you accomplish, is tied to what you attain. And so for people who have fixed mindsets, failure is seen as death. And like that might sound hyperbolic, but in the studies that they've done, like the psychological response tends to see failure as a existential threat because it threatens the image of yourself. And so in fixed oriented mindsets, you stay in the lanes that you're confident that you can do. So for me, I was confident in school. I was confident in taking tests. I was confident in doing that. And so in a fixed oriented mindset, my value, and this is something that I've had to struggle with as an entrepreneur, my value comes from what I attain. If I fail in a sales call, I'm a failure. If I fail to help somebody hit their goals, I'm a failure. If I fit like take whatever take if I don't execute perfectly, I'm a failure. And this is something that I've personally struggled with. One thing that we didn't talk about is I'm adopted. So for me, I was adopted as a toddler, and so anytime that I messed up, I thought people were not going to love me, and that I was going to be rejected, and then I'd be sent back. Right? I have massive uh, elements and hauntings of the fixed mindset versus a growth oriented mindset. In a growth oriented mindset, you don't see failure as something that threatens your existential value. Failure is seen as something that helps you become. Failure is something that helps you overcome. And so in entrepreneurship, I have encountered this time and time again because I'm not great at sales.
Hmm.
I'm not great at building a company. I've never done it before until
Yeah.
now, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so I'm failing left, right, and center, right?
Yeah.
But the goal of entrepreneurship is not to knock it out of the park on your first company. Most entrepreneurs, I just read this recently, most entrepreneurs don't hit it out of the park on their first time. Most entrepreneurs take 2.7 times to hit it out of the park.
Hmm.
Alex Ramosi talks a lot how he's had 9 failed businesses before he hit the one that like took off, right? So I highly commend that book, Carol Dweck's Mindset, because it goes into deep discussions on fixed versus growth-oriented mindsets and how you can inculcate the growth-oriented mindset in your own life, inculcate it in your children, inculcate it in your team members, inculcate it into your clients. It's a very good resource for exemplifying this idea.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. It's definitely something I'll dig into. It's almost like the gift and the curse, right? The curse is of being too successful too quickly or too good too soon, versus the gift of failure, most probably most unrecognized, but reality. What a gift! to fail
Right.
and experience the trials and tribulations, and then really be able to learn from them. Hopefully, hoping that the people actually do learn for those
Right.
those things. So
Yeah.
super
Yeah.
interesting. So, jumping over to maybe a fun piece, or maybe even an anecdotal piece of CIA life, covert operative life. Are there anything you can share, fun stories you can tell us about that time?
Hmm. Okay. Um, well, gosh, what can I say? So I can kind of give a little bit of description. So my job, at the CIA in the you can kind of picture the CIA as having four businesses, if I can say it that
Uh,
way. So like if any of your listeners are familiar with like GE, right? You have GE Power, you have GE Aviation, I think, right? Like they have these businesses that are all GE, but they're specific profit centers and whatnot. My wife used to work for GE, so that's why that comes immediately to mind.
okay,
The CIA has four core businesses. You have the Directorate of Operations, the Directorate of Analysis, the Directorate of Science and Technology, and the Directorate of Digital Innovation. Can still nail it. Got it.
let's go.
Let's go. Okay. So director of analysis is your the people who are taking a look at intelligence and actually crafting the intelligence products that policymakers read. So if you've ever I don't know if you've seen National Treasure 2, the President's Black Book of Secrets, right?
Mm.
Well, the president actually has a daily intelligence product called the President's Daily Brief, and intelligence and analysts are the ones who are responsible for putting that together. The director of science and technology, these are your science and tech nerds. These are the people who, if you are familiar with the A12 ox cart, which was the precursor to the SR-71. The agency had one of the first hypersonic jets before anybody else because their science and technology built it. The crazy science and engineering feats, if you think James Bond's Q, that's the director of science and technology.
Got it.
Shoe phones, that whole thing. Okay. Um, and then director of digital innovation. This is like cyber stuff, and digital transformation, digital products. Think like blockchain, AI, that kind of thing. Any sort of intelligence angle that they might be interested in. That's kind of where it gets housed. Director of operations are the cool kids.
Hmm.
So CIA is the premier intelligence service of the world that's focused on human intelligence. Humans. The difference here is NSA focuses on SIGINT, signals intelligence. The National Geospatial Intelligence Agency focuses on GeoInt or IMIT. CIA focuses on HUMINT. So the difference here is the CIA recruits human assets. So CIA officers are not spies. We recruit spies. And so within that director of operations, there's four roles. And I'm sorry for all the backstory and lore,
It's
but
okay. I
I'm
love it.
just trying to give context. So within the director of operations, there's four core roles: director of operations, or the case officer, the collections management officer, the staff operations officer, and the targeting officer. And any of your listeners can go onto the CIA website and find all this. So like I'm not telling you anything
Yeah.
classified.
You
Uh,
you you acted as all of those at one point in time in your career?
yes. Yep. Now, predominantly, I functioned as a targeting officer. I functioned as a staff ops officer. I functioned as a CMO, and then I had a brief opportunity to more or less function as a case officer. Case officers are the individuals who are going out and actually bumping targets at diplomatic parties, cocktail parties. They're doing the wining and dining. They're the ones who are actually going out and meeting with human assets who have access to intelligence of value.
Yeah.
Collection and management officers are the gatekeepers, QA, if you imagine. The ones who are taking a look at raw intelligence coming from a human asset. Hey, Bob, over in the foreign ministries,
Is
foreign
an
affairs
agent.
ministry.
Bob's an agent, and you're looking at it?
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. And Bob said that the prime minister is going to make X, Y, and Z decision. The CMO's job is to look at that and be like, well, is Bob actually in a position to know what the prime minister is thinking? Like, does he actually have access? Is Bob who he actually says he is? This information that he's saying, do we have anything else to corroborate that and back it up? Like QA.
Hmm.
Also, CMO functions as the gate where, yes, we're taking intake from intel from human assets, but also policymakers. Hey, somebody over at the National Security Council has X, Y, and Z questions on what this foreign ministry is doing. Who do we have who can actually answer that question? That's the CMO's job. I was certified in tradecraft as a collections management officer. So that was my primary function. The key thing about a CMO is that CMO is doubly trained. And this is really cool. So the CMO is trained to do everything that I just told you, but they're also trained to function as a case officer in the event that a case officer is unavailable and the CMO needs to step in. And so
Hmm.
that was the thing that was super attractive for me, because when they hired me, they said, hey, your psych profile basically says you can be either of these. Like they broken it down psychologically. They can tell who would be best suited for what roles. And for me, they said, it's like Sorting Hat, right, from Harry Potter.
Yeah.
Um, they said, which house do you want to go to? And I said, well, if I go CMO, I get to do both. And they're like, yes. And I was like, I'll do CMO. That was why I chose that.
Yeah.
Um, and so for me, I got to work a number of targets, and because of my computer engineering background, I became the go-to guy among my colleagues um, for cyber stuff. They were like, "Hey, you have a computer engineering degree. What does this mean?"
Hmm.
And I was the guy who was tasked with taking technical stuff and making it make sense for non-technical people. And I worked a number of hard targets. Hard targets are countries who are strategically adversarial to the U.S. And who have a sophisticated intelligence or technical apparatus. They're hard targets. They're aware of spying. They're aware of spying tradecraft, and they have a really good um, defenses against spying. That's why they're called the hard targets. And
All
your
human
listeners,
first, though. Is that, yeah. Okay.
human targets. Um, and so your listeners can probably figure out what countries might
Yeah.
fit that bill.
Yeah.
Um, and so for me, my specialty,
Within
given
your
my
origin and beginning of study, and yes. Yep.
exactly, yep. And so I worked multiple hard target sets. I will say though that probably my proudest, most exciting time that I had was actually working counterterrorism. I didn't think I was going to enjoy counterterrorism, but I really enjoyed it. That was really impactful work that I got to do. I will say I got to work counterterrorism at the height of ISIS, and when ISIS was really active, particularly in the Middle East region, where they were very they were going hard, and so that was really impactful. Getting to work joint operations with our military counterparts, and being able to enable the warfighters. I never was deployed to the field, so I got to do all of that from the safety of Langley. But being able to work counterterrorism was probably one of the most impactful things, because intelligence operations can last decades
Hmm.
before you really see, you know, true like the fruit value of everything. Counterterrorism, it's immediate. Like
Yeah.
you know whether or not you stopped a plot. You know whether or not, you were able to, conduct some operation, and whether or not it was valuable or not. And so that was a really exciting time. Yeah.
Cool. Cool. So, I guess maybe two kind of transitional things. What would you say? Um, what would you say was the coolest lesson learned, or the most important lesson learned from the time at the CIA? And then also, kind of a relatively short tenure, right? I don't know the average tenure of a CIA operative, but what
Yeah.
drove you to move on?
No, great question. I'm glad you asked that. So, gosh, there are so many lessons from my time at the agency. It's hard to pick one. Um, but I probably would say do doing work that is mission focused was probably the biggest lesson that I learned.
So for
Um,
you, future, you're saying that in your future endeavors, making sure that it's mission driven.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I'm not somebody who is financially motivated. That should probably be evident by the fact that I chose public service. Day one, they were like, "You're not going to get rich doing this career," so sorry. um, so I'm not financially motivated. For me, um, I'm motivated by mission, and if the mission um, is something that is pulls at my heartstrings. So I'm a red-blooded American. Okay, so there's an element there that draws somebody to like something like the CIA. Recognizing that mission is a major motivator for me, and then also recognizing that for all of its bells, whistles, and excitement, the CIA is not the only place where I can have mission impact.
Mhm.
Um, those were probably the two biggest lessons I learned from my time there. And you're right, my tenure there was actually relatively short. I was there for just over 3.5 years, I think, and that wasn't the plan, at least not originally. The plan was to be there for like 40 years and then die in my
Yeah.
chair.
Yeah, exactly.
Like I was like, I got my dream job, which I said that to one of my colleagues in my first few months at the CIA. I was like, man, this is like my dream job. This is like my goal. And he looked at me, dead honest. He looked at me. He's one of my best friends today, and he said, "Dude, if you hit your dream job at 20 years old, your dreams are not big enough." I was like, "Damn, that's rough."
There you
But it
go.
was it challenged me. And so after so I started at the agency January of 15, September of 15. My then fiance, now wife, we got married, and we had a number of conversations among the family. One of them was that her parents were looking to retire, and they wanted to know if my wife wanted to take over the family business, which would require us to be in Kansas City. At the same time, my own mom was going through some health related things that had me concerned about a long term career, potentially being overseas and away. And so we just looked at it all and said, well, got an opportunity to live my dream for three and a
Yeah.
half years. I wanted to give my wife the opportunity of living her dream too. And so for that reason, we made the transition to come back to Kansas City. And that was a difficult decision. I'm not gonna lie, but it's one that I don't regret in the slightest.
Yeah.
I would take decades of happiness with her versus decades of being together, yes, hopefully, but her not being as fulfilled.
Yeah. Love that. Family first. I'm a
Yep,
big proponent of that. So, teamwork makes the dream work, all
that's
the
right.
things, you know,
That's
but,
right. The
uh,
couple that sweats together stays together.
yeah, hell yeah. Good. Good. I love that. Okay, so then you transition and you take you're like, okay, I'm gonna get back into my engineering degree. I'm gonna
Yep,
go jump over to the cybersecurity space.
yep.
How was that transition? Where did you start out? Tell us a little
Yeah.
bit about that.
Yeah. So I mentioned once we made the decision to come back, that's actually when I initiated my master's degree because I was starting to make those plans. I was like, hey, I'm a couple of years out of date. I know I can't go and get an engineering job. But while I've been at the agency, I've been developing a specialty in cyber stuff. I'm really good at this cyber stuff. I seem to understand it. Let me go get a degree in cybersecurity. And I got a degree in cybersecurity specializing in ethical hacking and pen testing because that was sexy and cool. And I was like, I want to be a hacker because that's
Yeah.
awesome. And so I got the master's, and through that, I was exposed to a number of different certifications that might be good to get. I went and got my Sec Plus, and I was woefully unprepared to think that my CIA creds with my super top level security clearance and my Sec Plus degree was going to be enough to wow a company in Kansas City,
Yeah.
where they don't do cleared work and they don't care about my clearance, and Sec Plus does not translate to being a hacker. Um, and so, in talking with a number of different companies, several of them wanted me to get the OSCP. So, for your listeners, that's the Offensive Security Certified Professional. It's considered the entry level hacker cert. Now, also for your listeners, cybersecurity, the junior pen testing roles, penetration testers. There's a little bit of a philosophical difference in the cybersecurity field about junior penetration testing roles, because while it's technically considered a junior role, many companies, especially when I was getting into this, which was now almost a decade ago, I guess going on 8.5 years, so almost a decade. Um, Junior penetration testing roles is not a junior career move. You're junior in the penetration testing career, but in terms of like cybersecurity, it's not really a junior role,
Hmm.
because it has such a body of knowledge that you have to attain. And so a number of companies I was talking to wanted me to have the OSCP. I very quickly realized I was out of my depth with OSCP, but I was fortunate enough to find an interview with a company who specialized in application security testing. And during the interview process, I was very upfront with my capabilities. I was very upfront. I'd never hacked a web app before. I was very upfront with not being a developer. I've got computer engineering. I've done programming. I've built web apps, basic ones. And they were like, "Well, we're willing to train you in web application security." Um, and I said, "Okay, but like network security, right? Like network security is like the sexy thing, like compromising domains and getting domain admin and popping boxes. Like that's the sexy thing." And they're like, "Well, we don't have a NetSec role. We have an AppSec role. We'll train you to do AppSec, and maybe you'll get to do NetSec, but like that's the job." And I was like, "I'll take it." And so I got in, and I was fortunate that they trained me, and I found out that I really enjoy application security testing. It's really a lot of fun, and it lines up with my brain because I'm something of an information junkie. Um, and with me being a former spy, this probably makes sense. Um, I don't like knowing that there's information that somebody has that I don't have. Like I don't like that. Like, oh, you have a secret. I want to know the secret. Like that's part of like what makes me a spy or an officer running spies. Okay, I want to know the secret, and I'm really good at asking questions. That's part of me being a collections management officer. Is I'm really good at asking questions. And that ports really well over to application security, because in application security, at least the way that they train me to do it, is I have to be really good about asking questions about how the application is, how the application functions, the assumptions that developers built into how the application runs, and then what is the application trying to protect that it doesn't want me to know? And then how do I put the pieces together to get at the information that the application doesn't want me to know? And that sort of mindset approach is what has really fueled my success as a web application security tester, and web application security leader, is because I kind of take this mental model of being a spy, and I apply it to what I do in terms of cybersecurity. And that's really how I made the transition. Was somebody had a role, they were willing to train me, and I said, "I'll take it."
Yeah. I think that's huge. At the end of the day, right? There's moments in life when you either need to raise your hand or just seize the opportunity, and it goes back to that mindset, right? Be in the moment, rise up to the moment. When you're in that room,
Yep.
and there's plenty of people who maybe won't do that, and I think that's unfortunate, right? Because they're their own limitation versus jumping at an opportunity and just figuring it out.
Amen.
Go fail, go learn, work
Yep.
hard. The whole work ethic piece that your mom was saying, like, that's critical, right? Work ethic is one of the most important things, I think, of successful people. So
The
that's
crazy
cool.
thing about the crazy thing about overnight successes is you're an overnight success after years of trying.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
So for listeners not in the cybersecurity realm, real quick, let's just kind of go into maybe some examples of specific things that are in AppSec, that you are doing. Maybe how is this helping companies? How is this helping
Yeah.
consumers or users of applications? Like, why
Yeah.
is this role there, and what is it benefiting? Just to give a little bit of flavor and color to the space.
No, that's good. So, everybody and their mother has a web app. Everybody and their mother has a mobile app, right? We're even seeing this big rise right now with AI generated applications, where quite literally, I just saw a website yesterday. It was like, "Hey, you describe the app you're trying to build, and our AI thing will go and build it. Wix, you tell us what kind of website you want, and it'll go and build it. Right? Everybody's got a website. Every business has a website because it's your storefront. It's how people are interacting with you. And because it's a storefront, websites tend to be the entry point for your company, your organization. It's what you want people to come and interact with. Now, what people should be concerned about is depending on the type of application you have, even just static content management apps, static sites that just like have pictures and information and no real functionality. So no login features, no account features, no purchasing features, none of that. These can still serve as entry points into a corporate network. And so the reason why attackers like going after web apps is because they're meant to be rapidly deployed, they're meant to be accessible, and oftentimes they're connected to other things that attackers care about. Now, me specifically, I've really my niche, right, is web application security. So applications themselves. So things like authentication, compromising accounts, enumerating usernames, and possibly bypassing passwords, bypassing multi-factor authentication, bypassing security questions, resetting people's accounts. That's my bread and butter. I really thrive on authentication testing, but also compromising roles. So let's say, for example, you and I are in an app, and you're an admin, and I'm a normal run-of-the-mill user. Can I become an admin like Bryan? Can I compromise Bryan's account, or can I just become an admin myself and then delete Bryan's account? Those are the kind of things that people care about. From an e-commerce perspective, payment card details, so PCI compliance, this is huge. Personally identifiable information, so names, addresses, social security numbers, phone numbers, like that kind of stuff that people care about. Oftentimes, depending on the type of app, that's what people care about. And then now application security is going through a big overhaul because it was traditional web apps, APIs, mobile apps, things that people are really familiar with. But now we're also seeing the rise of distributed applications on things like the blockchain, also AI LLM enabled applications, where you're having this whole new like chatbot feature, and depending on what the chatbot has access to, might allow us to compromise other information. And so
Yeah.
from a web application security standpoint, those are probably a few areas that people would most connect the dots on why they should care about this.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's fascinating. Even like you said, the idea of AI being able to develop web apps. I'm curious what your thoughts are of a code base that is developed from an AI agent per se. Um, is that is that static, or is that code constantly changing? Because is that something where as they're developing new features and they're describing things, does it create vulnerabilities? Is there a
Mm,
concern with how the application is being created that creates risk associated to it? Because
that's a good question.
like the idea of having human controls, very structured processes versus, hey, go do this, build this. Oh, now
Yeah,
we need to go slap some PCI compliance on this thing, right? Oh, we need to go make it.
yeah, yeah. No, that's good. So we're actually the initial original like early models with things like OpenAI's ChatGPT, the early models with things. I can't remember if Gemini specifically had issues with this, but I remember specifically ChatGPT had problems with this. The problem with what you're describing is what is often called vibe coding,
Right.
and it's where you're like, hey, do this thing and write me some code, and then the bot goes and writes the code. You're like, you describe what the code is supposed to do, and then the bot goes and does it. The problem with that is that the early models were trained on things like Stack Overflow, Reddit, and other places where that's not bad necessarily, but the problem is that Stack Overflow and Reddit is oftentimes where people go and say, hey, my code isn't working, fix it, right?
Okay.
Um, like
Interesting.
help me fix it. And so the model was written was we're being trained on improper data, and because of that, the code is vulnerable. And so the concern with vibe coded websites and the vibe coded applications gets down to the model security and what is the data that the model is actually trained on, and is it actually secure data? And this is actually where like having verification processes for like static application analysis, dynamic application analysis, which is what I really do, to uncover difficult to find logic bugs. And because you notice that I mentioned what are the assumptions that are built into the app, the developers oftentimes will have assumptions about how they intend for the app to get used, and they're unintended assumptions. But it's just like for example, if you have a workflow of applying for insurance and it's 1, 2, 3, 4 steps, the developer assumes the user is going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. So can I break that assumption and go 1, 3, 4, or just jump straight to 4 and just do stuff, right? I'm breaking an assumption. The same thing applies to vibe coded applications. The LLM may have an unintended assumption based on the context that it was given and based on the model
Right.
that it was trained on, that maybe it doesn't directly result in a vulnerability, but you can then chain things together to break the logic of it that then does result in vulnerabilities. So there is concerns. I don't know about dynamically changing code on the back end,
Or
depending
is
on
that
how
not
corporate
happening and that's just in my mind, you know?
it very well could be, but then this gets to where, like, depending on the organization and depending on the companies who are allowing you just to like vibe code websites, right?
Yeah.
Depending on how those things are being constructed and how the code is being maintained, it very well could be dynamically changed on the back end. But if you're using something like a versioning software like SVN, GitHub, Jira, whatever, then hopefully those processes are at least being reviewed by a human in the loop. At
Yeah.
least that's what you'd hope, at least. But I don't know. That depends on the
Right.
organization policy.
Well, it's interesting, there's like you said, there's new apps coming out every day, and now there's a way
Every
for
day.
the layman to build them themselves and maybe not have
Hmm.
a information security architect or cybersecurity expert involved in the situation. And so are the,
Right.
I think people just have to be very aware with where they're logging in. They're
Yeah.
putting their information different places, and I just think
Hmm.
it's an interesting world.
For sure.
So was that Mandiant that you got? Was that the opportunity where you originally started, or what was Mandiant? And tell us
Yeah.
a little about that, and then even the transition into Google.
Yeah, so no, it wasn't Mandiant. This was a very small company in Kansas City. It was called Security PS. And while I was at Security PS for a number of years, and then Mandiant actually approached me and said, "Hey, we're looking to build the web application team in the central region. We want you to come build it." And I said, "That's cool, sure." And so Mediant, for your listeners, is one of the foremost cybersecurity companies in the world. They were the first ones to release a report called APT1, which was they were the first private company to publicly point the finger at China and say, "We think that this this threat group that we've been tracking is a nation state actor." And they were correct.
Wow.
The U.S. government knew that beforehand. I think I can say that. The U.S. government knew that, but Mandiant was the first private company to publicly report that.
Yeah.
And so Mandiant is an incredible brand. Um, and so they approached me to build web application security team in the central region. And so I functionally managed that team. I was brought in. I helped with interviewing. I helped building methodology. I helped build the way that we do web apps in the central region. And when I left, I was the first hire. And when I left a team of 4. So I had a number of individuals, all with different specialties, and that was kind of what we were doing. And so what was ironic though was that when I was hired, technically I was hired underneath Mandiant, but the company who wrote me the offer was a company called FireEye. So FireEye actually acquired Mandiant, but they kept the branding and all that. And so it was FireEye was the parent company and Mandiant was the sub company. Well, the day after I was hired, they announced the divestiture of FireEye from Mandiant. And so I messaged my boss and I was like, "Hey, what does this mean? Because I just started." And he was like, "Don't worry about it. You're good. Like, you're part of Mandiant. We're good." I'm like, all right, cool. So the divestiture happens, and then no, and then not like a little bit more than a year later, it was announced that Google was going to buy Mandiant. So it was this kind of like what whirlwind of I was
Yeah.
hired underneath FireEye. we divest FireEye, and then Google purchases Mandiant. And
Yeah.
so that was kind of the whole process. But the entire time I worked for Mandiant, I worked for the same team, I worked the exact same issues, exact same company sets, doing the exact same work. Just the letterhead changed from FireEye to Mandiant to Google, and I was still doing my thing.
So was the mission, were you, were these Google owned or Mandiant owned entities, or were these consumers, and you were basically like someone's building an app to get into the Google App Store and you're doing
Good question.
cybersecurity into it, or yeah,
Great question. Great question. Yeah. So, from my time at Security PS to Mandiant to Google, I have always, in my career, been a consultant.
yep,
And so, what that means is that companies hire the 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 company that I work for to come in and try to hack their websites, hack their applications, hack their APIs, hack their chatbots. So, in terms of like Google Play Store and things like that, like I did not touch any of that.
got it.
I did touch other companies' applications that they either have released on the Google Play Store or new versions of those apps, but we were not part of like Google Play evaluating the security of those apps to allow them to be on the Play Store, if that makes
Got it.
sense.
Yeah. No,
Yeah,
absolutely, absolutely.
yeah,
Interesting, interesting, very cool. I love the consulting piece of it. You know, really getting to experience a lot of different environments, companies, sizes of companies, etc. So,
very
and
quickly gain that experience. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. And then I think we'll jump over into Echo Team. You know, I think this is such a cool thing for you. I'm really excited to share this with our listeners and talk a little bit about that, right? You know, I look at you as one of those individuals, high performing individuals, and maybe just start out with telling the listeners about, you know, what is Echo Team? Why you're mission driven, but what made you to start this mission specifically?
yeah.
And then we can go from there.
No, thank you. Yeah. So, Echo Team is a online men's fitness company specifically geared towards high performant men. And so that is the clientele that I serve with Echo Team. And where this came from, to be very blunt, I was on paternity leave from Google with my first child, and all I was doing between feeding her, changing her, and getting her back down for a nap, when I wasn't trying to feed myself and take a nap as well, was I was just researching health and fitness. Like that's what I was doing. And this was 2022, beginning of 2023. And 2022, beginning of 2023, all I'm doing is researching health and fitness. I'm previously an ASM certified personal trainer. You mentioned this in the intro, but I have done everything from 5Ks, 10Ks, half marathons. I've actually going out for my first marathon here in about a week
Congrats.
and a half.
It's
Yeah,
awesome.
thank you. I've done duathlons, triathlons, tons of Spartan races. I've podiumed in the half marathon, 5K, and duathlon distances as well. I qualified for USA Triathlons nationals competition. Um, and so like I've always been involved with like health and fitness, and I've been very involved with sport activity just for my own benefit. And I looked around and I said, okay, this is 2023 and we're coming off of COVID. But I looked around and I said, okay, so many people, I got COVID, my wife got COVID. It was very minimal for us, but because we don't have high levels of comorbidities. And I looked around and I said, man, like COVID like wrecked people, not least of which because their health and fitness wasn't set up in a position that could actually help them cope with this.
Mhm.
And I said, this is something that I need to do. I need to take my knowledge and I need to help others. And so I quietly launched it in 2023, and I was just word of mouth. And then I more publicly relaunched it in 2024. And the mission is to help men be the men that God made them to be, high performant, dominant in every area of life, using health and fitness as the vehicle to convey those principles. And so that is a mission that I'm very driven by because I do firmly believe that as the men go, so go the family. And as the family goes, so goes the community. And if we can help men be the dominant leading men in their lives, in their families, and in their communities, we can affect change to help our communities and our states and our nation ultimately get to a better spot. And that really is a mission that I genuinely care about.
Love it. Very cool. It's very very much supportive of that. What's what's a piece of advice you would give to listeners to start on that journey?
Uh, what what did I say, Brian?
Yeah.
Um, all right. If I don't know if I can give just one, so I'm gonna give two.
Or three,
So
or
two.
four, however
Yeah.
much you want.
So sleep underpins everything. You gotta get your sleep. The CDC generally recommends anywhere from 6 to 9 hours. That range for some people, six is way too little. For others, nine is way too much. You got to play with that yourself. You got to identify where you feel the best. But generally speaking, it's 6 to 9 hours. For the person who says, I don't need 6 hours of sleep, Christian, I say BS. It is less than 1% of the population who can actually function on less than 6 hours of sleep effectively. There have studies that have shown time and time again performance degrades significantly on less than 6 hours of sleep. So, sleep. The second is hydration. You got to get your water in. The average American is chronically very good.
Out. I'm out.
And for those who might be watching this, I've been swigging my water.
Yeah.
The average American is chronically dehydrated. For most men who are reaching for the espresso at 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, it's not caffeine that you need. It's actually hydration. The symptoms of brain fog and tiredness actually more often stem from not having enough hydrating water than it is anything else. So get your sleep in, get your water in, and then the third thing I probably would say is eat a high protein diet. High protein diet is far and away the thing that is going to help energy, help performance, help you achieve your goals of building strength, building muscle, shedding fat. A high protein diet is the way to go. I know there's probably people who are like, oh well, I feel great on keto. Great, I love that for you. Because I say like low carb all the way. Carb is not the enemy. Um, I don't preach a restrictive diet. I do not preach low carb, high fat. I don't do anything. Like I really prefer people to eat a whole, single ingredient, nutrient dense diet, emphasizing protein. And if you do those three, you're going to be performing heads and shoulders above your peers, and you're going to start seeing tremendous progress in your own health and fitness. And at that point, your listeners can come and talk to me because then we can take them to the next level.
Yes. I love it. I love it. So I feel like, yeah, like you said, human bodies are different. The way people, where they come, their origins are different. What, their ancestors ate is different. So I think food impacts people in different ways and what they're used to. And so, when you look at your system, how does it differ from other systems out there? What's one of the things that you would say you bring to that table?
Yeah. So high performant men often have unique struggles that are not as readily felt by what I'll say the average individual. So there's unique struggles that go with that, particularly when it comes to brain fog, when it comes to metabolic decline, when it comes to traveling issues. And because of that, um, high performant men often do not have a lot of margin either. We don't have a lot of time to be spending 10 plus hours in our week to go to the gym and do hours and hours of cardio or whatever. And so where Echo Team differs is we do not have a cookie cutter program. We have a very, very strong scientific data backed system and philosophy that guides how we build and structure and our methodology, but every program is custom tailored to the man. So we have a health and nutrition intake questionnaire that we have the men fill out. We do a functional movement screener with them to identify muscle imbalances and deficient movement patterns. We also tailor the program exactly to their goals, whether that's fat loss, whether that's muscle growth, whether that's strength, whether that's performance and energy. We tailor the program to their goals. And then from there, we build a blueprint through accountability that actually helps the man implement the strategy effectively in their life. So how do they respond to hurdles? How do they actually process things? What areas of their mindset do we have to sharpen up so that they become the dominant man in every area of life? What lies do we need to break? And so really when we take it in total, the overall approach of how Echo Team approaches men, I think fundamentally is different because we're trying to solve for the man and their lifestyle, not trying to take a cookie cutter program and say, go do this or you're a failure. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I think individualization for fitness, health, really life, right, is
Right.
everybody's experiencing different things. It's super important. So that's awesome. Well, I highly recommend people, if you're struggling with this, even if you're not struggling with this, I'd reach out to Christian because I think
Right.
you could definitely take a lot away from that. Maybe something on the fun. We'll wrap up here in just a minute, but just
Yeah.
something fun to kind of close things off. And where what do you like to do so peaking podcast on that theme, where do you like to peak in your life? What makes you peak? What makes you happy?
And dude. Um, so uh I love running. Running is my happy spot. But genuinely, what probably brings me the most joy is just spending time with my wife.
Yeah,
Um, I that's peak happiness for me. It's just being with her.
quality time. I
Yeah,
love that. I
yeah,
love that. Cool. Well, that's a wonderful way to wrap it up. I think that's cool. Um, Tell people where can they find you,
yeah.
how can they get a hold of you, and
Amazing.
maybe if you want to share, we didn't touch on it. You are doing a new endeavor, but if you wanted to touch on anything there, feel free.
Thank
I'm
you.
sure people would be curious too.
Yeah. So I recently had a major career change. I have actually since left my Google position. And it kind of ties back to what we were talking about seizing opportunity. I had a very unexpected opportunity come my way to join a startup that has a massive mission that is very exciting for me. Unfortunately, it's still kind of under wraps, so I can't give many more details beyond that. But if people would like to connect with me on LinkedIn, you can check out my profile there and be in the know when I can announce things. But people can find me on LinkedIn, just Christian Elston on LinkedIn. People can find me on Instagram at Echo Team Fitness. I do have echoteamfitness.com if people want to check that out as well. But those are probably really the best opportunities to get in touch with me.
Cool. Awesome. Christian, thanks so much for coming on. I've loved our
All right.
conversation.
Thank you. This was
Really
great.
enjoyed meeting you and looking forward to the journey we're on. So,
Likewise.
absolutely. Okay. All right,
Thank you.
everyone. Thanks a lot.